What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So I will be making schedule predictions for every single Power 5 team in college football for this upcoming season, and I will also do a subsequent conference standings video once I finish up a specific conference, just as a synopsis of all of my schedule predictions. And I'm a little bit behind schedule on that right now, so I will have a lot more videos coming out soon to try to catch up on that. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into the Tennessee Volunteers schedule predictions. And just some quick thoughts on the Tennessee program heading into 2022. They are in a much better position than I think anybody would have predicted for them at this time last year. It wasn't long ago where the program had almost been written off. They were under investigation, and there was poor on-the-field play, and then the Jeremy Pruitt situation, and lots of bad stuff. But then the hire of Josh Heupel happened, and that really wasn't considered to be a slam dunk hire on a national level either. But then last year, he kind of proved everybody wrong. They had an outstanding season. They showcased incredible offensive prowess on the field very quickly. And that was with a very short-handed roster. They did not have a full scholarship roster. There was a lot of bad things going on around the Tennessee program when Heupel took it over. And he still managed to turn out a very good year one. And now this year, if they can build on that success and add some much-needed depth to the roster, improve their defensive talent and play, then things could end up looking very good for Tennessee in 2022. So let's go ahead and dive into the schedule. Let's start off with just some guaranteed wins for Tennessee against teams who just really have no hope of beating them next year, barring catastrophe. And those teams are Ball State, Akron, UT Martin, and Vandy. Vandy maybe has a shot, but I really doubt it. And so let's look at the first game that we're going to talk about here, and that is at Pitt, the Pitt Panthers, a team that they hosted in Tennessee last year, and it was a very good game. Honestly, Tennessee left a lot of opportunity on the field in that one, and so I think this year, with Pitt being probably not as good, if we're being honest, Kenny Pickett is gone, Jordan Addison is now at USC. I think Tennessee is a better roster than them across the board, and I think they have a better quarterback. I think the momentum around the program is much better. And so I think even though they are on the road and Pitt is a pretty good ACC team, I think Tennessee is a better team than them. I think Tennessee gets a big win there, and that really helps get the season rolling with a good out-of-conference opponent early that I have them getting a good win on. Next up is Florida, and this one is at home for Tennessee, and I think that makes a world of difference here. Tennessee is a better roster than Florida at this point. They're in year 2 under Heupel versus year 1 under Napier. Tennessee has the better quarterback. Tennessee has a massive home field advantage in this one. I think Tennessee really just, they should be able to get a pretty solid win here against a good Florida team that's not a pushover by any means. Florida could get a win in this one, but Tennessee, like I said, they're better at quarterback. They're better overall on the roster. They have, year 2 under their head coach versus year 1, and they're at home, so I have Tennessee getting a big win here against Florida. Next game up on the schedule is at LSU, and this one is interesting because LSU is a team that is just very hard to get a read on. They are good but not great, most likely. They're under year 1 of Brian Kelly, and we don't really know what that's going to look like yet. And they have a lot of talent on the roster, but it's a lot of unknowns as far as how the team's going to come together and work as a cohesive unit. And so with all of that, and then also being on the road, LSU has some good chances here, but I think Tennessee is in a better spot as a team right now. I think they're a slightly better roster, top to bottom, because we kind of know how it's going to fit together at this point. And year 2 under Heupel versus year 1 under Kelly, that makes a bigger difference than a lot of people will think. Year 2 of a head coach versus year 1 is a massive difference, just in the continuity of the system and a lot of that kind of stuff. I also think Tennessee has a big quarterback advantage in this one. And so even though it is definitely a game where they could lose, they could slip up and get a loss, and LSU is a very good team, and it's on the road, I still think Tennessee gets the win here. I think they're just a better team than LSU at this point. And so then you have Alabama, and if things go the way I have predicted so far, they will be 5-0 entering the Alabama game, which will make for an absolutely crazy atmosphere in Neyland Stadium. It's going to be, if that were to unfold, even if they were 4-1, but if they're 5-0 and that, rolls out that way, that environment is going to be absolutely electric. It's going to be crazy to see. But it is Alabama. And Alabama, I think, is probably the best team in the country next year. They're better than Tennessee basically at every position. And so it's Nick Saban as well. I don't think Tennessee is ready yet to go in to host Alabama and get that win. It is a game that they could win, and it would be absolutely massive if they did. But I think it's a little early. I don't think they're quite ready yet. I don't think the talent gap has been properly bridged all the way. And I think Alabama is going to end up getting a win there. But it is a game that is going to be very interesting, and I'm very excited to see how it unfolds. Next game up is Kentucky, also in Neyland Stadium. And Kentucky, they're a very good team. I think Tennessee's slightly better, not by a huge margin by any means. I think Tennessee has a slightly better quarterback situation as well. But I think the big difference here is that it's at home for Tennessee, and I think that makes all the difference in the world at this point in the season in particular. And so while Kentucky is a team that could definitely go in here and get this win, they're a team that's going to push Tennessee. I think Tennessee's slightly better team, plus they're at home, and I think they have a slightly better quarterback. And so I have Tennessee getting a win here against Kentucky. Next game up is at Georgia, and this is another one that is very intriguing. It's very interesting. Georgia is a better roster than Tennessee across the board, and I think Georgia's coaching staff is currently in a much better position than Tennessee's is. And the depth and the overall talent gap there hasn't been bridged yet. Georgia is still Georgia is still noticeably ahead talent-wise just from a roster perspective. If this game was in Neyland, I would give Tennessee a good shot at getting an upset. But this game is not. This game is in Sanford Stadium, and I just don't see Tennessee going on the road into Athens and upsetting a better Georgia team at this point. Again, it could happen. It very well could happen. Tennessee is good enough to get that win, but I don't expect it, and I think Georgia gets a win there, gives Tennessee their second loss of the season. But again, could be a very big game. I think will be a very big game. Could be a very big upset. But I have Georgia getting the win in this one. Next game up is Missouri. Missouri is a decent team. They're not as good as Tennessee at this point. They certainly are not as good at quarterback as Tennessee is. This one is also in Neyland Stadium, which I think makes it even more difficult for Missouri to go in here and get a win. It is not a game that Tennessee should overlook. Tennessee could very well slip up and lose a game like this. I don't think they do it here. I think that they get the win against Missouri. Like I said, they are better than Missouri, but it is a game to be cautious of for sure. Next game on the schedule is at South Carolina, and this one is one that I think could be very, very interesting. I think Tennessee is slightly better than South Carolina from a roster perspective. I think their quarterback is slightly better than South Carolina's, and, it's very interesting to see the two trajectories of these two programs. They're both in very similar positions as far as the programs are concerned, in my opinion, as far as where they were last year, or at this time last year, and where they are now, as far as the overall perception around the program. Again, I think Tennessee is at this point in a better spot than them, but it is at South Carolina, and with this one, I think this is one that South Carolina is going to circle on the schedule as a game that they really kind of want to make a big statement in, with how poor their performance was early on in the game against Tennessee last year. And so I think South Carolina gets a big win here. It is an upset in my opinion. It's not a huge upset. It's not incredibly unlikely or anything. But I do think South Carolina gets a big win here in a game that Tennessee could very well end up winning, but I'm going to go with South Carolina. And so that would make Tennessee 9-3 on the season, which is a great year for them in my opinion, and they should be absolutely thrilled with that, especially considering how dismal the situation looked this time last year. So now there are some losable games on here that I have them winning and vice versa. For example, like they could lose to LSU or to Florida or Kentucky or maybe even to Pitt, but I think it's more likely than not that they win all of those or at least all but one. And at the same time, they could also beat South Carolina, and that would push them to 10-2, which would be absolutely insane for the fans in Tennessee. And I do think that they are currently a step ahead of Kentucky and South Carolina in the East right now, but I do think that there's still a pretty noticeable gap between Alabama and Georgia, and then that next level of team where the Tennessees and the Texas A&M types of the world are kind of hanging out right now. But that gap is starting to close going forward, and Tennessee is making some progress on it, so that will be very interesting to watch heading into next season and beyond. Anyway, though, that'll do it for this one. Let me know down below in the comment section where you agree and or disagree with me on the Tennessee schedule in 2022. Tell me what record you think that they're going to have next year and who they're going to lose to, if anybody. Also, if you've made it this far in the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more college football content in the future. Like I said, I'm going to be continuing to upload pretty regularly. I have a lot of videos I need to get out because I'm a little bit behind schedule right now, so be on the lookout for that in the near future. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.